This is a new Sledgehammer Swim Jig from Nichols, and this thing's pretty cool. It's got a couple of attributes that sets it apart from the Sabre Swim Jig, when they're both really good, but when you're in a really heavy cover situation, I go with the Sledgehammer Swim Jig, and that's exactly what it's designed for. You can see it has a considerably thicker weed guard and a lot thicker hook, and that's for when those fish are in a really heavy cover. This thing will allow you to use heavy braid and really pull them up out of there without bending the hook and having other problems, but it's still got that nice shaped head on the Sabre Swim Jig that everybody likes. You know, when I'm throwing a swim jig too, whether it's the Sledgehammer Swim Jig or the regular Sabre Swim Jig, one of the things that I do that I think makes a big difference is I throw it on an extremely sensitive rod. This is a Halo Titanium series. This is a 7.3. I throw it on a 7.3 or a 7.6. But I like to throw it on a, you know, this is an IM10 graphite rod, and I like to throw it on this because on a swim jig, you really don't feel a whole lot of what's going on anyway, whether, you know, like if it's a vibrating jig or a spinnerbait, you know, you can really feel everything, and you can feel when some grass or something like that gets on the blade of your vibe jig or the blades of your spinnerbait, and you know the bait's not operating properly. Well, when you're throwing a swim jig, it's really hard to feel, so I want to use as absolute sensitive rod as I possibly can, and then that way I can actually feel, I get a little piece of grass on it or whatever, and I can give it a couple little twitches and get it off there. And that's also why almost all the time on a swim jig I run braided line. This is a 30-pound Sunline SX. Like I said, once again, it gives me that little bit of extra feel. Now, if I'm throwing a swim jig and the water's really clear, of course I'm going to go to some Sunline fluorocarbon. But most of the time, I try to get away with braid. It gives you a lot more solid hook set, but I can just feel whatever I'm throwing on the back of it. You know, this happens to be the, you know, the Gambler burner craw. But with a real sensitive rod and braid, I can feel those little claws on the back of that thing turning, or if I have a little easy on the back of it, I can actually feel that tail paddling, and if it gets a piece of grass on it, I know just to twitch it. So the setup, you know, having a really sensitive rod and braid, you know, and I also like to I throw it on a, you know, a 6.3 to 1 or 6.5 to 1 Ardent reel. This is the Apex. But I think that setup will really help you be more efficient when you're throwing a swim jig, because you don't want to be reeling it in and half the time there'll be grass on it and, you know, it's been a wasted cast. So just a really high modulus graphite rod like this titanium series from Halo and braided line, I think it'll really help your swim jig fishing.